The thunder of Harley engines echoed through the parking lot of Jake's Roadhouse as the Iron Wolves pulled in after a long day's ride. Chrome gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Leather creaked as boots hit asphalt. It was supposed to be just another stop for coffee and pie before heading home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. But when Diesel Kane, the club's president, swung his leg off his bike and heard a sound that made his blood run cold, a small, terrified whimper coming from beneath his own machine, he knew this night would be different. What he found crouched under his Harley would test everything the Iron Wolves believed about protection, family, and justice. And the 3 words she whispered would start a war that would reach into the highest levels of power in their small town. Before we continue this story that will restore your faith in everyday heroes. If you believe in protecting the innocent and standing up for what's right, take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Because stories like this remind us that courage comes in all forms, and sometimes the most unlikely guardians are exactly who we need. Diesel Kane wasn't a man who startled easily. At 45, with arms like tree trunks and a gray beard that had seen 20 years of road dust, he'd earned his place as president of the Iron Wolves through respect, not fear. The club wasn't about crime or violence. They were veterans, mechanics, and working men who found brotherhood on 2 wheels. They did charity rides for children's hospitals, escorted bullied kids to school, and had a reputation for helping when others wouldn't. The patches on their vests told stories: Purple Heart for military service, wrench and gear for the mechanics. A small angel, wing for Tommy, the member they'd lost to cancer last year. That evening, 6 of them had ridden out to Jake's Roadhouse, a truck stop diner that served the best coffee and apple pie in 3 counties. The ride had been peaceful, winding mountain roads, cool evening air, the kind of brotherhood that comes from shared miles and mutual trust. Snake, the club's sergeant-at-arms and Diesel's closest friend, was already heading toward the diner when Diesel heard it. A sound so soft, he almost missed it over the cooling tick of his engine. A sound that shouldn't be there. A child crying. Diesel looked down at his bike, a 2018 Harley Road King, black and chrome, his pride and joy. The crying was coming from underneath. He knelt down, his knees creaking, and peered into the shadows beneath the machine. 2 huge brown eyes stared back at him from a dirt-streaked face. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, was curled up in the narrow space between his bike and a pickup truck. Her clothes were torn, her hair matted, and she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "Hey there, little darlin'," Diesel said softly, his voice gentle despite his intimidating appearance. "What are you doing under my bike?" The girl flinched, pressing herself further back against the truck's tire. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Please don't tell him I'm here. Please." Diesel's protective instincts, honed by years of looking out for his club brothers and his own daughter, who lived with his ex-wife, kicked in immediately. Someone had put fear this deep into a child, and that someone was looking for her. "Tell who, sweetheart? Who's looking for you?" Before she could answer, the diner's door slammed open with such force it rattled the windows. A man emerged, tall, thin, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place at a truck stop. Behind him came 2 other men, both carrying themselves like hired muscle. The girl's breathing became rapid, panicked. She pressed herself so far back under the bike that Diesel was amazed she could fit. "He's coming back," she whispered, and the pure terror in those 3 words made Diesel's blood boil. "He's coming back for me." The man in the suit was scanning the parking lot methodically, his eyes cold and calculating. He pulled out his phone, showing something to his companions. Even from 30 feet away, Diesel could see it was a photograph. Snake had noticed the commotion and was walking back toward the bikes. Hammer, Roadkill, Bear, and Preacher, the other Iron Wolves, followed his gaze and began moving into position without being asked. 20 years of riding together had taught them to read situations fast. The man in the suit approached a young couple getting out of their car. "Excuse me," his voice carried across the lot, smooth and authoritative. "I'm looking for my daughter. She ran away from our car about an hour ago. 9 years old, brown hair, probably scared and confused." Diesel listened to the man's tone, The way he held himself, the practiced ease of his lie. This wasn't a worried father. This was a predator, and the little girl under his bike was his prey. The couple shook their heads, genuinely sympathetic. The man thanked them and moved on to a trucker who was checking his load straps. Same story, same smooth concern, same underlying coldness that made Diesel's skin crawl. Under the bike, the girl was trying so hard not to make a sound that she'd stopped breathing. Diesel could see her small hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. "What's your name, honey?" Diesel whispered. "Lily." She breathed back. "My name's Lily." "Well, Lily, I'm Diesel. And I promise you, nobody's going to hurt you while I'm here. You understand?" She nodded, a tiny movement that somehow conveyed a lifetime of broken promises and disappointed hope. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The man in the suit was getting closer, working his way through the parking lot with methodical precision. He'd reached the motorcycles within minutes. Diesel caught Snake's eye and made a subtle hand signal. Snake nodded and began moving toward the other wolves. Without a word being spoken, they formed a loose semicircle around the bikes, looking casual but ready. That's when the man in the suit reached them. "Good evening, gentlemen," he said with practiced charm. "Beautiful bikes. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for my daughter." He held up his phone, showing a school photo of a little girl with neat pigtails and a forced smile. It was definitely Lily, but cleaned up, posed, artificial. "She ran off from our car, and I'm worried sick. You haven't seen her, have you?" Diesel stood slowly, his 6'4" frame unfolding like a mountain growing from the earth. He looked at the photo, then at the man, then at the two muscled companions standing 10 feet back. "Can't say that I have," Diesel replied evenly. "But it's dark out here. Kids can hide pretty good when they're scared." The man's eyes narrowed slightly at the word scared, but his smile never wavered. "She's been having some problems lately. Running away, acting out. I just want to get her home safely before she hurts herself." Under the bike, Lily's breathing quickened. Even from his position, Diesel could see her shaking her head frantically. Snake stepped forward, crossing his arms over his wolf's vest. At 62, he'd been Diesel's father figure, mentor, and closest friend for 2 decades. He'd also done 3 tours in Vietnam and had a sixth sense for when someone was lying. "That's rough," Snake said conversationally. "Kids acting out. Course, there's usually a reason for that kind of behavior." The temperature in the parking lot seemed to drop 10 degrees. The man's companions shifted closer, hands moving toward their jackets. "I'm sorry. I don't think I caught your name," the man said, his voice losing some of its warmth. "Didn't give it," Snake replied with a cold smile. Hammer, a massive man whose nickname came from both his job as a construction foreman and his tendency to solve problems with direct force, stepped into the circle. Behind him, Bear and Preacher flanked out, creating a wall of leather and determination. Roadkill, the youngest of the group at 38 and their technical expert, had his phone out, seemingly scrolling through messages but actually recording everything. The man realized he was outnumbered and outclassed. His smooth facade cracked slightly. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I just want my daughter back. There's a reward $5,000 for anyone who helps me find her." Diesel felt Lily tense under his bike. $5,000 was a lot of money to some people. Enough to make them look the other way, ask fewer questions. "That's a lot of money for a runaway kid," Bear observed. His voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it more menacing than shouting would have been. "Most folks just call the police for that." "The police are involved," the man said carefully. "But they're understaffed. I thought private citizens might be more motivated." Preacher, who'd earned his nickname by actually being an ordained minister before finding his calling on 2 wheels, stepped forward. He'd counseled enough abuse victims to recognize the signs. "You said she's been acting out, running away. How long has this been going on?" "A few months, ever since her mother died." Under the bike, Lily made a sound like a wounded animal. Diesel's hands clenched into fists. "Her mother died, and now she's running away from you," Preacher said slowly, his preacher's training helping him piece together the implications. "That's concerning." The man's composure cracked a little more. I don't like your tone. I'm her legal guardian. I have every right to. Legal guardian, Snake interrupted. Not father. Guardian. The distinction hung in the air like smoke from a tailpipe. Legal guardian meant paperwork. Meant someone had given this man authority over a child who wasn't his blood. One of the man's companions whispered something urgent in his ear. The man's face tightened. This conversation is over. If you see her, you're legally obligated to return her to me. Interfering with a guardian's rights is a federal crime. He dropped a business card on the seat of Diesel's bike. My number. Day or night. Remember $5,000. As the three men walked back toward an expensive black sedan, Roadkill managed to get a clear shot of the license plate with his phone camera. The Iron Wolves waited until the sedan pulled out of the parking lot and disappeared down the highway before anyone spoke. That wasn't her father, Preacher said quietly. No shit, Snake replied. Question is, who was he? Diesel knelt back down beside his bike. They're gone, Lily. You can come out now. It took several minutes of gentle coaxing before Lily crawled out from under the Harley. When she finally emerged, the full extent of her condition became clear. Her clothes were dirty and torn. She had bruises on her arms in the shape of adult fingers, and she moved with the careful, painful precision of someone trying not to aggravate injuries. Bear, who had 2 daughters of his own, knelt down to her eye level. Hey there, sweetie. Are you hurt? Lily nodded, then shook her head, then started crying deep, silent sobs that shook her small frame. Preacher went into the diner and came back with a cup of hot chocolate and a sandwich. Lily accepted them with the desperate gratitude of someone who hadn't eaten in a while. Can you tell us what happened, honey? Diesel asked gently. Who was that man? Between sips of hot chocolate, Lily's story came out in fragments, broken pieces of a nightmare that made the biker's blood boil. That's Mr. Morrison. He was Mommy's lawyer. When she died, he said I had to live with him because she left papers that said so. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. But Mommy didn't write those papers. She told me if anything happened to her, I should go live with Aunt Sarah in Oregon. She made me memorize her phone number. What makes you think your mom didn't write the papers? Roadkill asked, his computer programmer's mind already working through the implications. Because Mommy was left-handed, but the papers were signed with her right hand. And because she never called me Lily Rose like it says on the papers. She always called me Lily Flower. The bikers exchanged glances. A 9-year-old had spotted a forgery that had apparently fooled the legal system. How long have you been living with Mr. Morrison? Preacher asked. 3 months. Ever since the funeral. Her voice got smaller. He said if I tried to run away or tell anyone about our special games, he would make sure Aunt Sarah had an accident like Mommy did. The silence that followed was deafening. Every man in the circle understood exactly what special games meant, and every one of them was fighting the urge to get back on their bikes and hunt Morrison down. Snake's hands were shaking with barely controlled rage. What happened to your mom, sweetheart? He asked, his voice carefully controlled. Car accident. But Mr. Morrison was there right after it happened. Before the police even came, and he had papers ready the next day, saying I belonged to him. Lily looked up at Diesel with eyes that had seen too much. I tried to run away to find Aunt Sarah, but I don't know how to get to Oregon. I've been hiding for 2 days. I thought if I could just find a police station. Why didn't you go to the police right away? Hammer asked. I did. Officer Jenkins said I was confused about what happened with Mommy, and that Mr. Morrison was a respected member of the community. He brought me back to Mr. Morrison's house. She shuddered. Mr. Morrison said I was a troublemaker, and if I kept lying, he'd make sure I never saw Aunt Sarah again. Then he hurt me and said it was a reminder to be good. Diesel pulled out the business card Morrison had left. Morrison and Associates. Family law. An address in the wealthy part of town. Lily, do you still remember your Aunt Sarah's phone number? She nodded and recited it perfectly. Roadkill was already pulling out his phone. What are you thinking, boss? Snake asked. Diesel looked down at Lily, then at his brothers. These men had served their country, raised families, and always stood up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. They'd found their purpose in protecting the innocent and fighting for justice when the system failed. This was what they lived for. I'm thinking we just found ourselves a war, Diesel said quietly. Roadkill's phone call to Aunt Sarah confirmed Lily's story and revealed the full scope of Morrison's crime. Sarah Parks was a kindergarten teacher in Portland who'd been frantically searching for her niece ever since learning about her sister's death. She'd hired a lawyer and a private investigator, but Morrison's forged guardianship papers had been filed in multiple states, creating a legal maze that would take months to untangle. He's using the legal system against us, Sarah explained through tears over the speakerphone. Every time I try to prove the documents are fake, he files new motions and delays. His lawyer friends keep backing him up, and meanwhile, my baby is trapped with that monster. Sarah confirmed that her sister had indeed been left-handed, that she'd never used Lily's middle name, and that she'd specifically told Sarah that if anything happened, Lily should come to Oregon. I'll drive down tonight, Sarah said. I'll be there by tomorrow morning. No, Diesel said firmly. If Morrison's been planning this since before her mother died, he'll be watching for family members. We need to be smarter than that. He looked at his brothers. Roadkill, I need you to dig into Morrison's background. Find out who he really is, who he knows, how he pulls strings. Already on it, Roadkill replied, his fingers flying over his phone screen. This guy's got connections all over the state legal system. Bear, call your ex-wife. Didn't she work for Child Protective Services? Yeah. Linda's still a social worker. She'll know how to navigate this mess properly. Preacher, we're going to need a safe house. Somewhere Morrison and his people can't find her. My church has a shelter program. I can make some calls. What about me? Snake asked. Diesel smiled grimly. You and I are going to pay Mr. Morrison a visit. Time someone explained to him that his special games just ended. Lily had been listening quietly while eating her sandwich. Now, she tugged on Diesel's vest. You're really going to help me? She asked, as if she couldn't quite believe it. Diesel knelt down and looked her in the eyes. Lily, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Do you see these patches on our vests? She nodded, looking at the Iron Wolves insignia, the various pins and badges that told their stories. Every man here has sworn to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's not just words, that's a promise we made with our lives. And you know what the most important rule of the Iron Wolves is? She shook her head. We don't leave family behind. And your family now, Lily Flower. For the first time since crawling out from under his bike, Lily smiled. It was small and tentative, but it was real. Over the next hour, the Iron Wolves transformed from a group of friends on a casual ride into a precision machine, focused on one goal: getting Lily safely to her aunt and making sure Morrison could never hurt another child. Roadkill's research painted a picture of a man who'd been operating in the shadows for years. Morrison specialized in family law, particularly cases involving orphan children and contested wills. He had connections throughout the state court system, friends in law enforcement, and a reputation for handling difficult cases that other lawyers wouldn't touch. More disturbing, Roadkill found court records showing at least 6 other cases in the past 5 years where Morrison had been granted emergency guardianship of children whose parents had died in sudden accidents. In each case, the children had been transferred out of state within weeks, and the guardianships had been quietly dissolved months later. This isn't about Lily, Roadkill said grimly. This is about a network. He's been trafficking kids through the legal system. Bear's call to his ex-wife Linda provided the roadmap they needed. As a veteran social worker, she knew how to file emergency intervention orders and could work within the system to protect Lily while exposing Morrison. But it has to be done right, Linda warned over the phone. If you mess this up, Morrison will disappear with the girl, and you'll never find her again. Preacher arranged safe house accommodations through his church's domestic violence shelter network. Lily would be protected by people trained to deal with exactly this kind of situation. As the plan came together, Diesel felt the familiar weight of responsibilities settling on his shoulders. He'd led men in combat, guided his club through difficult times, and always brought his people home. But this felt different. This was about innocence, about a little girl who'd hidden under his bike because she had nowhere else to turn. This was about justice. Morrison's house was everything Diesel had expected: a sprawling colonial in an exclusive neighborhood where lawyers and doctors lived behind tall fences and security systems. The kind of place where monsters hid behind respectability and good reputation. Diesel and Snake rode up the circular driveway at 11 p.m., their engines echoing off the perfect landscaping like thunder announcing a storm. Morrison answered the door in a silk bathrobe, his face shifting from annoyance to fear as he recognized the two bikers from the parking lot. "What do you want?" "This is private property. We need to talk," Diesel said calmly. "About your legal guardianship practices." Morrison tried to close the door, but Snake's boot stopped it cold. "I'm calling the police," Morrison stammered. "Go ahead," Snake said with a cold smile. "I'd like to talk to them too. About falsified guardianship documents. About children who disappear after their parents have convenient accidents." The color drained from Morrison's face. "You don't understand the situation," he said quickly. "That little girl is disturbed, traumatized by her mother's death. She makes up stories. Stories about left-handed signatures written with right hands," Diesel asked. "Stories about special games that leave bruises?" Morrison's jaw worked silently for a moment before he stepped back. "Come in." But this conversation never happened. The inside of Morrison's house was as cold and sterile as the man himself. Expensive furniture, expensive art, everything carefully arranged to project success and respectability. But Diesel noticed things that made his skin crawl: children's toys scattered in a back room, a pink bicycle by the garage, drawings on the refrigerator in a child's hand. "How many kids, Morrison?" Snake asked quietly. "I don't know what you're talking about." 6 emergency guardianships in 5 years. All children whose parents died in accidents. All transferred out of state within weeks. Morrison's hands were shaking now. "You don't understand how the system works. These children needed homes, needed care. They needed protection from you." Diesel interrupted. His voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. "How long have you been trafficking kids through fake guardianships?" "It's not trafficking. It's placement. There are people who want children, who are willing to pay for the legal work." Morrison stopped, realizing he'd said too much. Snake stepped closer, his Vietnam combat training evident in the way he moved. "People who are willing to pay for children. You know what we call that where I come from?" Morrison backed against the wall. "You have no proof, no evidence. It's the word of a disturbed child against a respected attorney." Diesel smiled coldly and pulled out his phone. He played a recording of their conversation from the past 5 minutes. "Actually, we do. Thanks to modern technology." Morrison's face went from pale to ashen. "Here's how this is going to work," Diesel continued. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to call the court and withdraw your guardianship claim over Lily. You're going to admit the documents were forged. And you're going to turn over every file you have on the other children you've trafficked. And if I don't, then this recording goes to the FBI, the state attorney general, and every news station in the state. Plus, you'll have to deal with the iron wolves." Snake cracked his knuckles. "We have a very long memory when it comes to people who hurt kids." Morrison sagged against the wall, the fight going out of him like air from a punctured tire. "You don't understand. There are people involved in this, people with connections. If I talk, they'll what?" Diesel asked. "Have an accident like Lily's mother?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Morrison, let me explain something to you," Snake said quietly. "My brothers and I have spent our entire lives protecting people from monsters like you. We've fought wars, we've taken bullets, and we've buried friends who died defending innocents. You think some lawyers and corrupt cops scare us?" He leaned closer. "We're not going anywhere. We're not backing down. And if anything happens to that little girl or her aunt, you won't have to worry about your mysterious connections anymore. You'll have to worry about us." Morrison nodded frantically. I'll withdraw the guardianship. I'll give you the files. Just leave me alone." "Oh, we're not leaving you alone," Diesel said. "We're going to be watching you for the rest of your life. And if we even hear a rumor that you've gone near another child, we'll be back." As they walked back to their bikes, Snake shook his head. That was too easy. He gave up too fast. "I know," Diesel replied. "He's going to run. Probably tonight." "Good. Let him run. As long as Lily's safe." But as they rode away, both men knew this was far from over. 3 days later, Lily stood in the parking lot of Jake's Roadhouse wearing clean clothes and a huge smile. Aunt Sarah knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face as she held her niece for the first time in months. The Iron Wolves had done more than just rescue one little girl. Working with Sarah's lawyer and Bear's ex-wife Linda, they'd exposed an entire network of corruption that reached from small-town courts to state-level officials. Morrison had indeed tried to run, but Roadkill had anticipated that. His digital forensic skills, honed during his years as a computer programmer before joining the club, had uncovered bank records, encrypted communications, and a network of accomplices that stretched across 3 states. The FBI had arrested Morrison at the airport with a suitcase full of cash and false identification. His confession, motivated by the realization that the Iron Wolves weren't bluffing about their promise to watch him, had led to raids on safe houses and the rescue of 4 other children who'd been trapped in the trafficking network. Officer Jenkins, the cop who'd returned Lily to Morrison instead of investigating her claims, was facing charges for corruption. 3 judges who'd rubber-stamped Morrison's fraudulent guardianship papers were under investigation. But for the Iron Wolves, the real victory was much simpler. A little girl was safe, and she was going home with someone who loved her. "I don't know how to thank you," Sarah said, her arms still wrapped around Lily. "You saved her life." "No thanks needed," Diesel replied. "This is what we do." Lily broke away from her aunt and ran to Diesel. She hugged his legs, looking up at him with the trust and affection of a child who'd found safety in the most unlikely place. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Diesel knelt down to her level. "Lily, remember what I told you about family? About how the Iron Wolves don't leave family behind?" She nodded. "Well, that's a lifetime promise. If you ever need us, if you're ever in trouble, you call us and we'll come running. All you have to do is ask." He handed her a card with the club's contact information. "But I want you to have a normal life, Lily Flower. I want you to go to school, make friends, laugh, and play. I want you to grow up safe and happy. And I want you to remember that sometimes, when things seem darkest, help comes from the most unexpected places." Lily threw her arms around Diesel's neck and whispered in his ear, "Thank you for not telling him where I was." Diesel's throat tightened. "Thank you for being brave enough to hide under my bike." As Sarah and Lily drove away toward Oregon and a new life, the Iron Wolves stood in the parking lot, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Good work, brothers," Diesel said quietly. "Just another day at the office," Snake replied with a grin. But they all knew it was more than that. In a world that often seemed dark and uncaring, they'd proved that ordinary people could still do extraordinary things. That justice didn't always come from courts and badges. Sometimes it came from leather-wearing, Harley-riding men who lived by a simple code: protect those who can't protect themselves. 6 months later, Diesel received a package at the Iron Wolves clubhouse. Inside was a school photo of Lily, smiling genuinely for the first time since anyone had known her. She was wearing a t-shirt with a Beaches motorcycle on it, and her hair was in neat pigtails, tied with small ribbons that looked like tiny Iron Wolves patches. The note that came with it was written in careful 9-year-old handwriting. "Dear Iron Wolves family, Aunt Sarah says I should tell you about my new life. I'm in 3rd grade, and I like math and reading. I have a best friend named Emma who thinks motorcycles are cool. Aunt Sarah is teaching me to ride a bicycle, but I told her I want to learn to ride a Harley when I'm older." She laughed but said maybe. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for keeping your promise. I'm not scared anymore. Love, Lily Flower. P.S. I still have the card you gave me. I keep it in my school backpack, just in case." Diesel pinned the photo to the clubhouse wall next to pictures of other people the Iron Wolves had helped over the years. Veterans who'd needed jobs, families who'd lost their homes, kids who'd been bullied until the club stepped in. Each picture told a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of a brotherhood that extended far beyond blood or patches or motorcycles. That evening, as the Iron Wolves sat around their table planning their next charity ride, Bear raised his beer. "To Lily Flower," he said, "for reminding us why we do this." "To Lily Flower," the others echoed. Outside, their Harleys sat in the parking lot, chrome gleaming under the streetlights. Ready for the next journey, the next call for help, the next chance to prove that heroes come in all forms. And somewhere in Oregon, a little girl slept peacefully in her own bed, safe and loved, knowing that if she ever needed them, her Iron Wolves family was just a phone call away. Closing message to viewers: stories like Lily's happen every day in our world. Children who need protection, families torn apart by corruption, innocent people trapped by those who abuse power. But they also remind us that heroes exist in the most unexpected places. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness and courage still matter, please share it with others. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments about times when unexpected heroes appeared in your life. Most importantly, remember that each of us has the power to be someone else's hero. You don't need a motorcycle or a leather vest, you just need the willingness to stand up for what's right when it matters most. Because sometimes, when a scared child is hiding under your metaphorical Harley, the choice you make in that moment can change a life forever. Thank you for watching, and remember, be the hero someone needs today. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.